Quick intro. As you already know, as a verb, to release means to transfer a piece of software. For example, we can ask a release engineer to release the code to production. As a noun, release means a certain piece of software. For example, we can say, we are testing release 5.0. By the way, we'll apply the term production version or version of prod to the release that is in production now. We'll apply terms coming release to whatever version we are going to release next. The important thing to understand is that a release is not some kind of abstract software. It is a package of concrete files having concrete versions. Please pay attention. Example. The release 5.0 contains 63 files. Each of these 63 files has its own version. When the testers have finished testing release 5.0, the release engineer will release precisely the same 63 files that were in the testing environment when the testers finish testing. If the testers finish the acceptance test on January 3rd at 4 p.m., and at that time the file register.py had its own version 5.34, then it must be exactly version 5.34 of register.py that is included into the release 5.0 when 5.0 goes to production. By the way, the version number is automatically assigned to a file by CVS or whatever version control system is used every time a developer saves, or more professionally, commits an updated version of the file to CVS. During release, we transfer one or a combination of the following things to the certain environment, usually to production: new features, modification, removal of existing features, bug fixes, release types. There are two main types of releases. 1. A major or milestone release happens at the release stage of the cycle, after the testing and bug fixes stage is over and a go decision was made at go, no-go meeting. Besides files with codes containing the application core, HTML files, images, etc., major releases also contain SQL scripts to be uploaded and run on production DB servers. For example, if a developer wrote code that uses a new table in the DB, he needs also to create an SQL script that has to run in the DB to create that table. The version of a major release is presented as an integer and incremented by 1 after each major release, 7.0. 2. A minor release takes place between major releases. Minor releases can have one of three variants: feature release, patch release, mixed release. A feature release takes place when there is a need to add new features, modify, or remove existing features. A patch release takes place when the code in production has a bug or bugs. Here, we release a fixed code. By the way, there are two cases when we have a bug in production. A. The bug has non-P1 priority. For example, the code register.py doesn't check if the email entered by the user has a dot before the top-level domain. In this case, there is no emergency to release a bug fix ASAP. So we can accumulate several non-P1 bugs and do a single patch release with bug fixes for all of them, or we'll just wait until the coming major release where all those bug fixes are present is pushed to production. B. The bug has P1 priority. For example, the user cannot register at all. In this case, we have an emergency. A patch release is initiated, created, and released by the rules set in the Emergency Bug Fix Procedure, EBF procedure. The patch release for the Emergency Feature Request, EFR, must also follow EBF procedure. You'll learn more about EBF and EFR in a minute. A mixed release is a minor release that occurs when there are both features-related changes and bug fixes. The version of a minor release is presented as a number after a decimal point and incremented by 1 after each minor release, 7.1. Differences between major and minor releases? Here are several differences between major and minor releases. 1. The main difference is that, as a rule, major releases have many new features or bug fixes, while minor releases usually contain only one new feature or bug fix. For example, after the release of version 5.0, we signed a contract with the credit card processor so we can accept another credit card, Discover. In that case, we can do a special feature release 5.1 to add just one functionality, user can pay with Discover, to our website. 2. As a rule, major releases have a recurring schedule, for example, one major release per month or per quarter. Minor releases happen whenever they are required. 3. Major releases exist in the main cycle, while minor releases exist outside of the main cycle. Brain positioning. So far, we have used the term cycle as a company-wide activity, the purpose of which is to create a major release. But cycle can also be applied to software development activities on a much smaller scale. For example, at 10 a.m., developer Josh was writing code for 7.0 and tester Chad was testing code for 6.0. At 11 a.m., developer Andrew discovered a bug in the production version 5.0. At 11:15 a.m., Josh and Chad were assigned to work on a patch release. At 11:15, Josh and Chad started work within their own mini-cycle for patch release 5.1, which exists outside of these cycles for major releases 6.0 and 7.0. For a major release is always a planned event, while a minor release can be both planned and unplanned. A planned minor release usually happens if there is a certain feature that couldn't be included in the major release due to resource or time constraints. For example, we really loved the features from the spec number 1478, improvements for shopping cart. But we didn't have time to develop and test it for release 5.0, which had to be pushed to production on March 15th. So we just released 5.0 and begin work on 5.1, which will contain features from spec number 1478. If code of major release had known non-P1 bugs prior to that release and we agreed to fix them in a patch release after the major release is out, if we've discovered several non-P1 production bugs and decided it's time to do a patch release. An unplanned minor release usually takes place if there is an emergency bug fix, an emergency feature request. Brain positioning. An emergency bug fix, EBF, is a situation where a P1 bug is found in production and we need to push a patch release ASAP. An emergency feature request, EFR, is a situation where we need to release a certain feature ASAP. For example, our competitor won a patent case, and so we have to change some part of our software as soon as possible to make it work in a different way. In the case of an EBF, an entry with the type bug and the priority P1 is entered into the bug tracking system. In the case of an EFR, an entry with the type feature request and the priority P1 is entered into the bug tracking system. By the way, in order to address possible EBFs after a major release, many companies create SWAT teams, which consist of a developer, a tester, and a release engineer. Each team has a 24-hour period when each member of the team must be available to come to the office at any time. Each team member whose team is on duty must have his cell phone on at all times and must refrain from doing stuff like drinking too much tequila or going skiing at Lake Tahoe. When a call about an EBF is received by a SWAT team member, he must drop whatever he is doing, come to the office, and do his job until the patch release is out or until the next SWAT team arrives. Version numbering. Let's look again at version numbering for releases. What does production version 9.14 tell us? Basically, two things. 1, we had 9 major releases. 2, we had 14 minor releases after the 9th major release was pushed to production. What is the version of the next minor release, if any, 9.15? What is the version of the coming major release, 10.0? By the way, please note that this format, number of major releases, number of minor releases, is the most common way to track release versions, but each company uses whatever format they like. Lesson recap. 1. As a verb, to release means to transfer a piece of software. For example, we can ask a release engineer to release the code to production. As a noun, release means a certain piece of software. For example, we can say, we are testing release 5.0. 2. A release is not some kind of abstract software. It is a package of specific files having concrete versions. 3. During a release, we transfer one or a combination of the following things to a specific environment, usually production. new features, modification or removal of existing features, bug fixes. 4. A major or milestone release happens at the release stage of the cycle, after the testing and bug fixes stage is over and a go decision was made at the go/no-go meeting. 5. The version of a major release is presented as an integer and incremented by 1 after each major release, 7.0. 6. Minor release comes in the form of feature release, patch release, mixed release. 7. A feature release is for adding, modifying, or removing features. 8. A patch release is for bug fixes. 9. Mixed release is both feature and bug fix related. 10. The version of a minor release is presented as a number after a decimal point and incremented by 1 after each minor release, 7.1. 11. The main difference between major and minor releases is that, as a rule, major releases have many new features or bug fixes, while minor releases usually contain only one new feature or bug fix. 12. An emergency bug fix, or EBF, is a situation where a P1 bug is found in production and we need to push a patch release ASAP. 13. An emergency feature request, or EFR, is a situation where we need to release a certain feature ASAP. 14. The rules on how to initiate and proceed with EBF or EFR should be written in an emergency bug fix procedure or EBF procedure document.